Ah, yes. Here we are. You made it. On a Tuesday morning, we've got Lebang Hosana, we've got Gareth Cliff, we got you. It's all we need. In the words of Buzz Aldrin, second man on the moon, all you need is a rocket experience. It's all you need. Lebang, how many of your children are awake?
My
How many of your kids
8-year-old.
wake up this early to be around you at this time of the morning, huh?
You won't believe it. My 8-year-old is already dressed. He's like walking in to tell me, "Mom, I'm
Wow.
ready. You can take me to school now." I'm like, "Dude, it's 6.
Oh, wow.
Go back to bed. Do something with your time." My
Man.
newborn is wide awake. She's screaming, so she's busy with her dad. She's getting fed. It's her third or fourth meal of the day, and everybody
wow.
else is snoring away. Lucky them.
You know, you've just illustrated the importance of a two-parent household better than anyone else ever.
Like that's like bare minimum.
Right?
Like no one person should have to do this by themselves. Not at all.
No way. No way at all. So, it's a busy week again. We're on a Tuesday morning. Got lots to talk about. Already the month of July is almost behind us. It's going to be over in the blink of an eye. Then it's August and downhill to the end of the year. And before you know it, it's done. Done. That's what Rena always says. You know, my business partner. She always says, if you haven't done something by August, it's never going to happen. Just forget about it.
Oh yeah, no. The year's over. Totally. It's actually already done. Like by now. Just
Yeah.
it's literally like as you're saying, it's the beginning of the end, pretty much. Start prepping for 2023. Scary.
That's right. Oh my God, 2023. Is that the number of the
Dude,
next one? The number of the
yeah.
beast. 2023. Jesus.
Scary
man.
times.
No, it is
Scary.
pretty scary. So I watched a bit of TV yesterday, which I don't normally do, but I thought I'd better check what's going on in the news because honestly, if I don't watch it on TV, I'm not going to get it. I don't bother to. I couldn't be bothered to read Twitter. And you know, like you watch some of this stuff and it's kind of depressing. You're like, why am I watching this? And also social media gives you an interesting perspective, but sometimes you need to actually see how bad the journalists have become in like mainstream media, and that's what I was doing as well. So I watched the I watched the SABC. Okay, so I haven't seen them for a long time. So they've got Francis Hurd, who you know has been on for a long time.
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Yeah.
Like I think Francis Hurd and Leanne Manis are the white people they've got something on like the SABC. They've got some secret that because they can't get rid of those two. I mean, listen, those two are quite good. Actually, they're not the worst. You know, there are a couple of people there who really do know what they're doing. I would say that like Leanne Manis she's just so nice that I mean, no one needs to get rid of her. Plus, she's a bit of consistency in a world where everything keeps changing. So I don't mind her at all. I didn't know Francis was still there. I didn't know she was still doing the news. But I'm telling you, they've got to have something on like the CEO. They've got like a secret tape of the new board doing terrible things. I don't know, but they're still there. And
yeah, they took that tender and they ran with it. Hey,
I don't know what's happened there. Anyway, they had this international political head of the SABC on. I mean, this woman was absolutely one of the most useless correspondents I've ever seen them. But you could see they had to talk to her because she's got an important job there. So they go to her, and I don't even know what her name is. And she's talking about how great Prince Harry is at the UN, okay, and how amazing this Prince Harry is because he went to the UN to do a whole talk about all the hot button issues: mental health, women abuse, climate change. It was like he was ticking them off the agenda exactly in the order that you'd expect them to come off, right? And nobody was listening because look here, here's a picture of Harry at the UN.
oh, it's so packed. Wow.
They're like now the gallery on the side is for the public and for journalists. Those people in the middle are the countries who are meant to be there, and this is in the secretariat, which is the main room. That's where when an important world leader comes to address them, that now he's going to declare war on another country, or he wants to shit on them for like how bad their policies are. I can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people. That's all I can count in the crowd. Harry's basically talking to his lounge at home when he has a small drinks party for Meg. That's what he's got.
Maybe their invites got stuck in the mail. I mean, anything could have happened. I don't think they didn't want to be there.
I don't think they care about when. I don't think anyone cares about what Prince Harry said. In any case, it doesn't look like any of the big countries there because these are all the backseat people anyway. So I really think like there are two things. This tells me two things. Number one, it tells me Prince Harry is completely irrelevant, and we don't need to bother with listening to him anymore. And number two, I think we can stop listening to the UN as well, because if the UN is calling up privileged princes who've married Hollywood actresses to lecture the rest of us on what we need to be doing for the planet, go fuck yourself. We don't need your lectures, thank you very much. I think the whole world has had just about enough of people who really are privileged telling the rest of us what we're doing wrong. Enough of you. You can go, thank you. We have things like the petrol price and electricity issues to worry about, and you can go and get screwed. We don't care about you. We don't care about Meghan. Find something to do. Go and get a real job, Prince Harry.
I just think there's like real life things happening, man. Stop. We literally are faced with every single day having to make choices, right? And it's now gotten to a point where it's like, am I driving to the office or am I eating for the rest of the week? I need to decide because this is literally this is where we're at. I don't think they read the room. If they had read the room, they would have said, look, Prince Harry, we love you and all, but maybe it's not the right time. Can we book you for September? Maybe when it's a little bit less cold. I don't know. They
Lebang, like who out there is going, oh, you know, the person we need to listen to right now, the person we need to hear from is Prince Harry.
That's the guy. That's the guy we're going to listen to.
Said no one for ages. No one.
And then he's really not the worst of them.
Sorry?
No, I'm just saying he's not the worst of them. There's like way worse. He's bearable, I think. They get way worse. Like behind him is like years and years of just terrible people who've just been doing terrible things.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But the difficulty here is that, you know, Prince Andrew, at least we know, he's mostly well known for his pedophilia and being friends with what's his name, Jeffrey Epstein. So I think we've learned our lesson with Prince Andrew. He won't be addressing the UN anytime soon. But really, Prince Harry is like a bad imitation that nobody's asking for. Nobody's looking for him. He can go back to Malibu or wherever he's living with Meghan, and the two of them can have their chickens. Are they in Canada? I don't even know, and I don't care. Really? I think they're in California. I think they're in California.
Okay. But look, Gareth, the fact that you watched actual news is a good start.
I know.
Because really, the stuff on social media is just all bullshit. You don't know what's real anymore. Like, you can't trust any of the sources. I personally haven't sat and watched television and said, you know what, let me check out the news. I think I might just give it a try just to see what's going on these days. But I think rather that, because it's like, is there any hope for journalism left, you know?
Well, there is, but I mean, it's certainly not going to come from covering these kinds of things. And then I saw, to prove my point, because I didn't wait much longer, but the next thing was the sport that came on. There was a woman with very, very short arms who was hosting the sports segment on the show. And then, I mean, I thought that she's definitely not a netball player. That's 100% for certain, with those tiny, short little arms. She had like T-Rex arms like this. Wow. Anyway, so I see her, and then she's like, oh, we're very excited because today is the day that Zambia and South Africa play in the women's, what did they call it? I actually wrote this down because I don't know what it stands for. But I knew that I'd have someone smart like you. Women's football, the Women's West African Confederation, WOMACAF or something. Anyway, it's us versus Zambia, right? And the Zambian women walk onto the field and the South African women walk onto the field. And then we both have Nkosi Sikelele in our anthems, which is fucking confusing because you're not sure, you know. Yeah. We've both got that. So that's very confusing. I really think we should have rules. You can't have Nkosi Sikelele if we've got it already, or if they had it first, we need to find another one. Something like
Shotgun
that.
Nkosi Sikelele. Yeah.
I mean, come on. Anyway, So they've got their, and then you look around the stadium, nobody, not even family and friends. It's empty. There's not a person in the world who cares about women's football. Not one. But the SABC TV News are making a big fuss of it, like it's something we should all be watching. Like, hang on, guys. You
Well,
can't sell us things that we don't want to buy. And this goes for Prince Harry, and it goes for the women's football, and it goes for climate change, and it goes for all these other hot button topics that everybody's always talking about. I saw a guy from the Nelson Mandela Foundation who's basically like a librarian, and he was on from PE, a white dude called Vern Harris or something. He's got long, wispy hair, and then he's got this little goatee, and he's obviously been working at the foundation for a long time because he knew a lot about Nelson Mandela. He was probably a struggle guy with him. Anyway, he's talking about how the biggest problem in the world right now is racism. And I'm like, trying to sell us more things that nobody's buying. Because that's not true. The world's biggest problem at the moment is not racism. There's less racism at the moment in the world than ever before. Ever. And of course, it's still going to be a problem, and we're never going to get rid of all the racists. But this guy must be going on about this. We're in the middle of an energy crisis in South Africa, and this is what he's talking about. I mean, like, come on, dude. Wake up. People are not so stupid.
So two things. Firstly, women's football is really, really good. Really good. It's just being undersold. Gareth, the PR.
They're selling it on primetime news, Lebang, and no one cares.
The PR for women's football is in the dogs. They don't care about it, sadly. But they're really good. Banyana are kicking.
Who don't care about it?
ass.
Do you watch it every week? You kick it. You kick that on your TV every weekend.
I don't. But when I do see them, I'm like, shit, these girls are good. It's just that nobody cares.
That sounds like
nobody
cares. That's like
but
when you
go to
your, please. You know the U.S. women's football team, Megan Rapinoe, who got the Medal of Freedom from Joe Biden the other day. You know that she and her team were beaten by 15-year-old boys in a test match not so long ago. It's not that good, Lebang. It's really not. And I just don't believe you. I mean, you don't watch it, but you want everyone else to watch it. I mean, that's like the SABC. They put it on the news.
I want everyone else to watch it. I'm just saying the PR. The PR. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad, but it's good. I think Banyana is a very good team that just doesn't get the respect that they deserve, even from me. I'm admitting that, hey, if I'm going to speak this big talk, I probably should be watching it, but I will say it's good.
But then you're based on what? Like, you've watched 5 minutes of them?
What, dude? Like, what I've seen, the little that I have seen, and the women that actually playing there are good, bro. That's all I'm saying. Secondly, yes, racism is definitely still one of the biggest problems in the world. It's just that the list of problems has gotten so much longer that I don't think racism is the main one. That's kind of what's happening right now.
10. I'd say it's still in the top 10 of problems, but it's not in the top 5 anymore.
Yeah. I think it could be top 5-ish. It steeps into the other ones. But the point just works for them to make it seem like it's the main one. You know it. You know that. You want to tell us it's the only one.
You talk about PR. So this guy was busy trying to sell to everyone in the world, because he's at the Nelson Mandela Foundation, that the biggest issue is this, because he knows that the biggest issue in South Africa is that our government has completely fallen apart. They are hanging by a thread. They can't manage anything, let alone energy, petrol prices, the stuff that really matters. Infrastructure is breaking up everywhere in the world. You've seen, I mean, like, governments all over the world have screwed up colossally. Not just our government, but all of them.
Yeah.
And instead of dealing with that, the guy's like, oh, well, let's bring out the old racism mill because that's the one he knows he's got a little bit of moral high ground left on. And really, it's just tired.
Yeah.
I don't think first of all, no one's buying his story from the foundation, even on Mandela Day. It's like, and that's the only time they'll ever talk to that dude, ever. He's not important any other day. Second thing is Prince Harry, who's also not important unless he's talking at the UN, which I think was like shame, let's give him something to do. No one's buying his message either. He's talking about how he's suffered from mental health problems, and therefore there are people out there who need his help. Like, this is a prince. Do me a favor. No one's buying that either. And third of all, the women's soccer. No one's buying it, Lebang. Otherwise, people would be filling the stadium. So PR or not, No one cares. Stop trying to sell me stuff that doesn't sell, that no one wants to buy. That's my point.
To each their own at the end of the
No,
day, Garrett. Speaking
no,
of
no, no.
Mandela Day, I
No, but
personally didn't
hold
even
on.
know that it
Because
was
across
Mandela Day.
No, no, no. Hold on. I turn on the
Oh, are
TV
we still
and
talking? Okay,
this is the shit.
sure.
This is the shit they serve up to me. So no wonder media
Mm,
ratings are dropping like a stone. No wonder people are opting out of mainstream media and coming to podcasts. No wonder people are saying these guys have lost their minds. They no longer are relevant. They don't understand what matters to ordinary people. That's my problem. So yes, to each his own. And if there are people out there, God bless them, who want to watch Banyana play, go for it. The more of you, the merrier. Make it worth those women's time to go into that field, because I can promise you, with the exception of those of us who by mistake saw it on the news last night, no one's booking a flight to go and watch Banyana play. Nowhere in the world, ever. Not even their moms.
sure, but they are so good. Is the
You say
sad
so.
part?
You say so, but I don't know that. I don't even know
Yes.
who won. Do you know who won the game? Because I don't.
Sure. So Nelson Mandela Day yesterday, I didn't even know it was yesterday because it was a Monday, first of all. I'm usually used to it
Mhm.
being like a weekend, or they make like a bit of a hoo-ha about it. Everyone at work goes and paints a wall or whatever the crap. And then my son comes to me after school and he says, Mom, who was born first? So I'm like, okay, meaning he's like, who was the first human being on earth? Was it Nelson Mandela or was it Jesus? And that's when it hit me. I was like, yo, what are they
Oh
teaching
my
these
god.
kids
Yeah.
in these schools? Like, damn, like
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela has been really put up there. Like, he's like Jesus level now. That's where we at. And it scared me. It really scared me because now I had to respond to that. What the hell am I going to say to that? I don't want to dictate, for example, whatever he
Well,
believes. I mean, I can
they
guide him,
also
but fucking
they had a
hell.
story of this school in Kenya, and you could see it's like really, really impoverished. It's one of those schools that looks like a spaza shop in rural Kenya. Okay, and they're helping these poor kids, and then they've got the South African ambassador, I think it was, who's wearing his. They gave everyone in government those scarves in the 2010 World Cup. Do you remember? With the South
Yes, yes,
African
yes.
flag colors,
With the
and they
flag.
still
Yeah,
wear
yeah,
them.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's almost like government. They have this thing where, oh, you can see that guy had a scarf. He's been in government since 2010, so we must be nice to him, or we must like give him some room. Anyway, this guy, who's obviously our ambassador to Kenya, is with his scarf. He's busy singing to the kid, or telling the kids about Nelson Mandela, and then they all sing a song together, and you can see like these kids have nothing, right? I mean, this is a really poor school, and I thought, what are they teaching these kids? So they then go to the kids, and the kids are like, well, what do you respect and love about Nelson Mandela? And listen, I'm a Nelson Mandela fan. I think that this country would be much, much worse if he hadn't been around, and I do believe that there was a coalescing of power around him, and of men of good ideas. Some of them of virtue, some of them absolutely not of virtue, but that happens in every government. And this man who was an exemplary, illustrious sort of person who did exactly the right thing after coming out of prison and made sure he managed people's expectations, and he pushed the country into a direction which was internationally acclaimed, and he saved us from possibly a civil war and a whole lot of other things. So I have a lot of respect for Nelson Mandela, but I want to hear what they're teaching the kids. So they say to this one girl, well, why do you like Nelson Mandela? So she goes, well, he was very kind. So I'm like, no, 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 that's not the lesson. Because actually, he could be quite tough. Wasn't kind. Like, they're not teaching these kids the right things about him. And what you said now about your kid saying who came first, Nelson Mandela or Jesus, it's like they've just created this amalgamation of like all the things
Mm,
that they think kids should think are good. Instead of actually teaching them history, they're almost making it religion. And I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good at all.
exactly.
Just like I hate the people who criticize Nelson Mandela post fact and go, oh, well, he could have, should have, would have done this. Maybe he could have done more in this respect. Like, you weren't there. You don't know. And you didn't have anything to do with it. So I don't take your word seriously either. I think there's a lot of criticism of Nelson Mandela that is warranted, that is fair, just like it would be of any politician. But there's also this revisionist history going on at the moment, which is like trying to blame him for issues that we have today, when there are people who came after him who are
Definitely.
much, much worse.
Yeah, it's actually been going
Tahleko
on for a
agrees with
while
you.
now.
Tahleko agrees and says, Lebang, you're right. Banyana, they are very good. Well done. Sad they don't get the attention they deserve. Well, they beat Zambia 1-0, apparently. That's the score. So maybe we'll hear more from them. Who knows?
Yeah. So with this Nelson Mandela thing, I think it's been happening for a while now, these past couple of years, where generally it's almost like an undoing of what we were told growing up or what the history books say, where it's like he's been really coined as like a sellout. And people are almost planting false narratives and false information about what may or may have not happened back in the day to really try and shift people's ideas about him. And it's people are believing it. People are just like, yeah, he is a sellout. Yeah, he could have, he should have, he could have, he should have. What did you do, bro? Like, I don't think anybody who is just sitting and typing from their phones and saying what they're saying could have had the same ability to do any of that shit, let alone a little bit to even get on the road and do something.
But
So it's all it's
they're full of
nonsense.
shit, because if you ask them
Yeah.
one question about anything pre-1994 and the negotiations that took place at Codesa, or you ask them about who was in Nelson Mandela's first cabinet, or that there was a government of national unity, or any of that, they don't remember any of that. They don't know it because they've never read it. They've never opened a book, but they got lots of opinions. And was like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
Once you've read a couple of books, then we can have a conversation about this. But that you would sit there and have the temerity to criticize the first democratically elected president of this country and not know any of the facts. I mean, I don't mind if you criticize him, but then have some facts at hand. Then we can have a conversation. But these people never do. They always like criticize from the sidelines. Nelson Mandela could have been better. He should have done this. I'm like, okay, well, why don't you get elected because you're so good at this? And then we'll see how well you do. And of course, they never do,
Exactly.
because they've got a very important job living off their parents and using mom and dad's money to buy data so that they can tweet. That's their important job. So until they stop doing that, then they'll have time to run for political office, and then we can take them seriously. Fundo says, a kid from my class once answered this question. Mention one thing you remember about Nelson Mandela. And the kid answered, his white teeth, lol.
Ew, damn.
All right. Well, I mean, I had to get that off my chest first thing, but it wasn't the only stuff that got my attention yesterday. I saw Ben Affleck and J-Lo are married again. Did you see that?
Yay, I'm so happy for them. Yeah, man. Love always wins, man. They deserve it. They've, found each other, lost each other, found each other again. And now they just
made that terrible
are.
movie. They made that horrible Gigli movie together. That's where they met. And I believe that these two people, I mean, J-Lo, I will never forget for this line. I said to her, J-Lo, what are you most proud of? And she went, I am 100% New York and I'm 100% Puerto Rican. I was like, that makes 200%. So I knew I could
So
ignore
that's
her.
200%. Okay. Gotta love
And then
J-Lo.
Ben Affleck once went on Bill Maher's show, which I love watching. And Ben Affleck basically accused a guy called Sam Harris of Islamophobia and racism because he thought that race and religion are the same thing. And I thought, you're also an idiot Hollywood actor. You shouldn't really be asked your opinion on things, because the two of them deserve each other. J-Lo and Ben are perfect for each other. They could sit there all day and add, 10 and 10 and end up with 5. It's going to be so much fun to watch. And of course, they are both really good-looking people, so they'll have supposedly hot children. Although I've seen good-looking people
Hot
that
children.
produce very good-looking
Gareth,
kids.
hot children.
But as in good-looking kids. You know what I mean? You expect two good-looking people. Look at Brad Pitt and what's his name, Angelina Jolie. They are supposed to be the most beautiful man and woman, and when they produce
And they have
kids,
hot
the
children.
kids should be, well, they should be really good-looking kids, like beautiful faces, like lovely hair. And watch, it doesn't always end up that way. Sometimes the kids end up looking not so great. You know what I mean? So
I
Jennifer
feel you.
Lopez,
I feel you. I don't think she should have. Well, look, I'm not gonna say what she should or shouldn't do, but like, I think how many kids? She's cool now. Like, she's pretty much clocked. You know, she's,
J-Lo,
she's there. I don't know if they into like the let's have kids together thing. I think they like let's face each other and love each other the whole time thing. That's how they
all
keep
right.
coming back to one another. I think they probably would have had kids by now.
This
Maybe.
is her fourth marriage, J-Lo. And
Oh,
it
that's
is
not bad.
his second or his third. So let's hope they get it right this time.
Yeah, no, good to them.
Michael says, why the hell should we care about them? Because, Michael, when the comet hits the Earth, don't you want to know that you saw J-Lo and Ben Affleck get married and that made you smile? I mean, is it too much to ask?
And the thought of her possible hot kids. Come on, Michael.
Exactly. They grow up to be the best looking people on the planet and conquer us all with their amazing good looks. I don't know. Sanela says, what stands out for me about Mandela, particularly in line with the current state of affairs, is how he looked at Cyril in almost every picture that has of both of them, almost like he knew he's a crook. Well, you can argue that, but the word on the street was always that Nelson Mandela did want Cyril to succeed him as president and was not so keen on Thabo Mbeki. That was the word from all the historians who've written about this. And of course, you can go through Mandela's papers and see whether that's true for yourself. I haven't. And I'll admit straight up, I don't know. But that was always the rumor, is that Madiba was more in favor of Cyril. But actually, Thabo kind of took over as prime minister during that term of Mandela's from 94 to 99, which was, the standard term. And then after that, Mandela decided, no, I'm going to relinquish the role and Thabo must take over because he's pretty much been running things anyway. And that's what happened. So I actually think Nelson Mandela had quite a high opinion of Cyril, or certainly thought Cyril was a good heir apparent, but that didn't end up happening. So I don't think he thought he was a crook. But if that's what you think, Sanele, you're reading the room. I don't know. What I remember, says Congo Chris, about Mandela is his role as God in Bruce Almighty.
Wow.
I think you're mixing up Morgan Freeman and Nelson Mandela, but who can tell the difference? Yeah, who can tell? Who can tell? Anyway, we want to hear from you this morning. Send us your comments. Let's look at a couple of headlines that are in the news, because there is plenty to talk about today. Where do you want to begin, Lebang? I've got SARS, I've got Kailicha, I've got the High Court, or I've got we've already discussed Ben and Jennifer, so we don't have to do that. How about
let's
this
start
one?
with yeah, okay.
No, go ahead. What do you want?
I was going to say SARS as a formality because I genuinely need to know what's going on with my returns, and then let's go into the rest. So let's get the bad ones out the way.
You know that the workers at SARS are on strike, and I think this is terrific news because if they're on strike, then they're not taxing us, which means I hope that more and more people are not going to be paying their taxes, because I don't think people should really. It's theft. And I've always thought all tax is theft. And I don't think SARS should be the only government department that runs well. I mean, it's just not fair. It makes the rest of the department look bad. So if SARS is working and all the other departments are not working, like public enterprises or home affairs or health or education, which we know are all a disaster, why should SARS always make it difficult by having a high standard and taxing the people of this country effectively? I think it's only right that SARS drop their standards and end up like all the other departments. And in return, we get to keep more of our tax money. You would hope, right?
So unfortunately, they'll find another way to tax us. I think they'll definitely find a loophole and be like,
yes.
Our service is so shitty. Well, we're gonna tax you for that fact as well. So no, I don't think that's the solution.
You would be right. I mean, I'm living in a fool's paradise here in my head. But the South African Revenue Service has said that ongoing strikes at its operations has caused continued delays, forcing the tax body to close 40 branches throughout the country. Public Servants Association and the National Education, Health and Allied Workers Union, NEHAWU, have resumed their strike at SARS after wage negotiations hit a deadlock last week. The unions are demanding a 7% increase. SARS have offered to channel their savings from 2021 towards salaries. Again, Why must we pay? Just think of how perverse this is. Lebang and Gareth and you must pay more. We must pay more taxes to government so that they can pay the officials who are going to come and suck more tax out of us. Isn't that like paying your torturer? Isn't that like you give
That's
your
exhausting.
jailer, you give your jailer money? You're like, please put me in jail, and here's some money, here's some extra 7% every year for torturing us and for taking all of our earnings. Here, have some more money. Surely that strikes some of us as perverse. It certainly does me. In a statement released on Monday, SARS advised taxpayers that the strike will continue to affect some services at its branches. SARS apologizes, they say, for the inconvenience caused, but due to industrial action taking place across SARS, we're experiencing delays in servicing our taxpayers. Servicing. That's what they call it now when they service us. I mean, excuse me while I dip my hand into your bank account and take half of the money you've spent your year working for. That's what we call service. Thanks. That's great. I
Feels
love
like
that.
they're putting their
Service.
hands up our asses. If
Right.
anything, that's the
Yes.
service that we're getting. That's what
Yeah.
they mean by service.
Right.
Yeah.
The statement added that SARS would follow up on virtual bookings that were not honored due to the strike as branches work towards recovery, blah, 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 blah. Apparently, the SARS branch in Mabatu in the Northwest was only open for appointments set for Monday. So I'm sorry about that. People of Mabatu, you'll have to just wait to pay your taxes. Poor you. Oh, what a terrible thing to wake up to this morning. Anyway, I'm sure everybody's very upset about
Yeah,
that.
look.
So there's
Look,
SARS.
I mean, the people that do work there are, I've got a couple of friends that work there, and they're just like, yo, we sitting at home waiting for them to tell us when we can come back because it's bad. Like, they literally are like, they need the increase. I'm like, cool, I get you. But what does that mean for the rest of us? Like, who are going to have to pay more taxes? We're going to have to, like, where's this money going to come from? Is my question. Because that service that you
Yeah,
spoke of,
I don't want
that's
you to
us
be
that's gonna keep servicing.
I don't want you to be so flippant about that word, so you need the increase. No. Screw your needs, SARS. I don't care about your needs. You don't care about my needs. You don't care about Lebang's needs. You don't care about
Never
the ordinary
have.
person on the street's needs.
Mm-mm,
You've never cared.
mm-mm.
You take that money if you think you're entitled to it. And if we are owed money, we have to wait for years to get it back from you. So, no sympathy. Do not give them a single solitary cent more. If I were the president, and I'm very glad I'm not because I would have been a horrible, horrible president, but I'd still be better than this one. I'd say to SARS, listen, go and F yourselves because nobody in SARS deserves more money. If you want the people of this country to really get angry, give the people who take their money before we get to steal it, the people who collect all that money, give them an increase. You really think that's going to make the people of South Africa happy? I think we're all lining up with that going, yeah, I think SARS, of all the people in government, the department we hate the most should get an increase. That's a good idea. Let's not say that. We don't want them to be
Yeah.
misled. We want to be honest with them, Anyway, we got to get to JJ Cornish, and I don't want to waste too much time, but there is another story which I think is quite interesting. So in Khayelitsha, Becky Cele, who was embarrassed the other day when a community policing forum man who we had on the Burning Platform, Ian Cameron, interrupted his what was really meant to be a PR exercise by pointing out that the government and the police department in particular is doing nothing to curb crime in the Western Cape. In fact, they are getting in the way more than anything else. And embarrassed Cele to the point where Becky Cele was shouting at him and saying, shut up, shut up, shut up. Well, he went back to Khayelitsha and arrived at a community meeting on Monday to the tune of I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor, which was played loudly by the police band. Now, I don't even know what to say about this, but if this isn't
You can't
really
make this up.
bad kabuki theater, I don't know what is. In fact, it's like Punch and Judy theater. That's what it is. You've got this idiot in a hat who somehow, I think he thinks it looks good on him. I mean, he believes that the public image that we have of him is different to the image that he has of his own in his head. Or maybe he thinks they're the same. But this is the guy who told ordinary South Africans during lockdown, you must get into bed at 9 o'clock. What are you doing up over the weekend? We will come and put you to bed. Remember, he's the guy who said shoot to kill to the police when it comes to criminals. And many people thought that was great, but it does mean shoot to kill even if you're not a criminal some of the time, which is not so great. This is not a person we should be taking seriously. And then he has the temerity to arrive and he instructs the band. This is not by mistake or accident. He's like, when I go in, you must play I Will Survive, because that'll make people impressed with me. I mean, what an idiot. What a childish notion of political responsibility this moron has. He really is a fucking idiot.
That guy is so embarrassing. Oh my
He
days.
is, right?
Everything Biggie Cele does, I literally sit back and question, how did we allow this man to get to that position? If he's not dancing to music, wow, like just like walking around working in inverted commas, he's literally just behaving like a fool. I don't understand whose idea it was. Who said, you know what? What's gonna get them is if you walk in, get a theme song going, they're gonna love that. They're gonna love that. Somebody just needs to
that'll
stop
make
him
them
because
impressed.
everything he does
Right.
is just embarrassing. Always. Oh, he's the last guy.
Well, here we have our own correspondent, our own Minister of African Affairs, JJ Cornish, and he's wearing his hat, especially for us this morning, Lebang. Look at that. He's wearing his hat. Isn't that great? Look at the man.
It looks
JJ
so
Cornish,
good on
that
you.
looks terrific on you.
Good morning. I just wore it so that I could doff it for Lebang, who dealt journalism, which is my livelihood, a death blow. You know, every time you have somebody who says, I don't even bother to read the newspapers, I get a cold band of steel around the old wedding tackle because it's the most scary thing anybody can ever say. I've broken that habit and I don't need it. It'd be like a drug lord saying, you know, I've just gone off heroin. I can't stand it. Yeah.
Well,
how are you guys this morning?
The real drug lords shouldn't get high on their own supply, is the old rule. Anyway, JJ. But yeah, true, I mean, look, journalism isn't covering itself in glory these days, as evidenced by any cursory glance at the television or at the newspaper, frankly. And which newspaper? I mean, if we read IOL, we're just getting Iqbal Serve's propaganda. If we read the News 24, we're getting Adrian Basson's left-wing take on everything. It's very hard to figure out what is news and what is propaganda these days. I mean, even evidenced by my watching of the SABC last night. But let us
Who's
focus.
Actually reading it? Who's reading it? You know, right? The Pretoria News used to sell 40,000 copies when I worked there. It now sells 1,300 copies. So who's reading it? I don't know. It's amazing, huh? All of them have fallen dramatically, but that sort of dramatic fall, I don't know.
Yeah, and listen, obviously some of it has to do with people using the internet and maybe being a little more tech savvy and perhaps finding alternative news formats, but a lot of it also lies at the feet of the journalists themselves, who really squandered their kind of moral and intellectual capital over the last few years. It's very sad, but I know that there are good journalists, which is one of the reasons we come to you. And
yeah, we used to tell you, we told you what you should be reading and thinking. Do you remember when they brought when the Rand Daily Mail fell because people stopped reading it? Then they brought it back. They brought back the Weekly Mail. Then they brought back the Daily Mail. Then people said, "But hang on, once again, you know, you're telling us things like sin is bad." I thought we knew that, and they stopped buying the Daily Mail. You know, so I mean, at the end of the day, you can fool some of the people some of the time. But, you know how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, don't tell people what you think they should know because they'll figure it out themselves, especially these days. They've got alternatives. What we do want to know and what we love to do with you is to catch up on what's going on the continent. It is brought to you by the Johannesburg Business School. We look at what's happening with our immediate neighbors, with people a little bit further north, but all the African news that you could possibly handle in a couple of minutes with JJ Cornish. And what do we got on today? Let's talk about Madagascar because we haven't been there for a long time. I love Madagascar, JJ, because the names are always very, very long. Antananarivo. What was the guy who was in charge there?
Heri Rajwan Arimampianini. I'm the only South African journalist who could say the president's name, and I think that's why you called me on. And how about Heri Rajwan Arimampianini? He took over from he stood and beat Andry Rajoelina. Andry Rajoelina, I only remember his name because he was a DJ. Yeah, before becoming. But he was supposed to come here last week. He didn't. He sent his foreign minister, Richard Randriamandrato. He came and he spoke to Cyril Ramaphosa. Not an easy name to say, that latter one. But anyway, about the blocking of Airlink, the South African commercial airline. When Madagascar reopened after COVID in March, the airlines were allowed back, but not Airlink. So if you wanted to go to Madagascar, you had to fly via, I don't know, sometimes via Paris, if you or via other countries. But a lot of African countries you have to do this. But it really hurt Airlink, and it hurt Madagascar quite badly because they rely on us for tourism. I mean, they need a lot of South African tourists. It's a beautiful country, Gareth. I don't know if you've been there. It's absolutely amazing country with wonderful people. The thing is about Airlink, the 3 envoys from Madagascar came into South Africa last year, bringing 70 bars of gold. That was 70 million rands worth of gold. And they held the envoys and they held the gold because they didn't declare it, and $20,000 in cash. They've been holding on to this. And so we all thought that the block on Airlink was because in retaliation for this. But Mr. Randriamandrato said, no, it's nothing to do with that. There was some, quotes, housekeeping issues. You can use that next time you want to do something drastic and don't know exactly how to justify it. Just say it's housekeeping and you'll get away with it. But he never explained that. But apparently Airlink will get back. But, I was speaking to diplomats very much in the know on this one. And they were saying, well, the thing is that Rajoelina doesn't like us because, of course, we did give shelter to the president that he ousted.
The president before him,
Yeah. And so, he doesn't like us. But the point is, they really can't do without us. They need us. So they had to rethink this. It's a bit of a mess.
I would think, JJ, they need Airlink more than Airlink needs them. I mean, Airlink flies to all kinds of countries. They're one of the few. In fact, I think they're the only successful airline that is actually operating at a profit at the moment in South Africa.
The only airline that flies, South African commercial airline that flies to Madagascar.
Correct. I mean, they even manage to fly to places like St. Helena every now and then, which is pretty bizarre because, of course, that's on the west coast of Africa. It's the island that they imprisoned Napoleon on. I think that we're the only country that sends a plane there. Otherwise, they get one ship twice a year. So, I mean, Airlink probably don't need Madagascar, but Madagascar need Airlink.
Certainly, I think that's the case. They need us from South Africa. They've got it's a remarkable country built by the French, of course, with all the accoutrements that the French would have put in there. But really, I've been there as an election observer a couple of times, and it just is quite amazing.
Interesting history too. I remember we did a blind history episode on the Queen of Madagascar, who was an amazing woman, Ravalo Manana or whatever her name was. I can't remember now because I can't pronounce.
That's the president, former president.
No. There was another. Yeah. But I'm trying to think of what her name was, and I may have it wrong. But anyway, the Queen of Madagascar, and just what an interesting Rana Valona. Sorry, is her name. Rana Valona. Yeah. And this was a fascinating place. I mean, if you read a history book on Madagascar, you're not going to put it down in a hurry. It's full of really interesting stuff and some quite brutal stuff too.
They drive the taxi drivers drive those little Citroën deux chevaux, the lelijke eentjie, the Dutch used to call them. I owned one in London, so I'm very fond of them. And to get into one of them as a taxi in Madagascar just fills my heart.
And the capital is what? Antananarivo.
Antananarivo, yeah.
Right.
But then they shorten everything. They call it Tana.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I mean, it's a mouthful, so I can understand that. So talk about Kenya for a little bit, because that's another place which is hard to follow what's going on over there. I mean, I thought I knew what was happening until quite recently. Now they've had an election, and the new guy, what's his name? The new presidential candidate who's trying to legalize dacha. What's his name?
Well,
This dude?
they have an election coming up, and Raila Odinga 43% of the poll projected, and William Ruto 39%. So they're running neck and neck. And there's a number of candidates, but this man, Professor, because he has some legal training, George Wajakoya, he's 68 years old and dresses well. He dresses. I think he called somebody with a goatee and wispy hair, which is what I have too.
Oh, wow.
And so we all dress alike. And he does this on television a lot, I suppose that means Johnny Zoll. I'm not sure.
But he says him closely.
We should. Well, you can't help it. But and he's got 4% of the support. So, but why is that important? Well, you look at the other figures I've gave you, 39 and 43. 4% could be the kingmaker between the two of them, and they are losing votes to disaffected young people. And this man, as I say, dresses like Bob Marley and says, I'm going to legalize marijuana and allow it for medicinal use. Also, I'm going to allow the sale of snake poison. Very, very lucrative. If you sell that around the world, you'd make a buck or two. And hyena testicles. Now, I'm not sure exactly what you can do with those. It might be a sort of an aperitif, something you eat with a cocktail. I don't know. I'm vegetarian, so I oppose the eating of any testicles. But whether that's going to fix Kenya's balance of payments problem, I don't know. But George Wajakoya is a very worrying factor for both Raila Odinga and William Ruto at this stage. But it does add a bit of color to that election campaign.
Now, when Kenyatta stepped aside, is his heir apparent? This it's obviously not Odinga, so it's the other guy, Rata.
No. Surprisingly, he fought Odinga so badly that they had that huge violence there. But he has endorsed Raila Odinga. William Ruto was his deputy, and he's kept saying, "Look, I don't know what I've done to piss this guy off, but that's a bit uncool, isn't it, to turn to somebody else?" But so it's a very, very colourful election indeed, and of course a very important country in Africa.
What's the going price for hyena testicles these days? I mean, what do we think we should pay for that? And he wants to legalize this. It's illegal.
I think if you have them, strewn with snake spit, it'll be a lot more expensive than if you used snake venom. I think that's the more expensive one, but I don't know. As I say, it's 50 years since I last ate a hyena testicle, so I just don't know the current price.
Well, finally, let's just look at the African Union, and there was a summit in Lusaka. What have we achieved at that African Union summit in Lusaka, in Zambia? What did they come out of it with? What have we decided the AU is good for?
Well, you were quite nasty about multilateral fora earlier today, and princes who address it and so on. So when I use accelerate integration and promote value to raw materials, increased industrializations, general terms that don't really mean much in practical language, you're just going to get irritated again. There was effectively 51 of the 55 foreign ministers met beforehand, but only 8 of the actual heads of state were there because that was the economic communities of Africa and so on. There was an interest, and they just spoke in these kind of generalities. They do have this Agenda 2063. Which means that they can say what they like, because in 2063, neither you or I mean, we're both going to be dancing on air by then. So, you can actually claim to be doing anything.
Lebang might still be here. She'll still be here. She'll be alive and well in 2063. But
not if she keeps dissing newspapers.
But JJ...
JJ, come on, forgive me.
Go back to my question. Like the AU, what is it good for?
I'm not going to close that line. You can do it. You know, there was a nice power play, and I love those sort of things with Morocco. They came back they ran out on on its predecessor, Organization of African Unity, when it recognized Western Sahara, and they finally kind of brown-nosed their way back in 2017. Happily, by this time, South Africa has taken a very supportive line on Western Sahara. So what they're planning to do is get in, make enough friends, buy enough friends, which is not what you can do when you have an economy, built on prostitution and dacha and oranges. But nevertheless, buy as many as you can, and then get Western Sahara expelled. So they had another bash at that by kind of indicating that not all African Union members should be invited to TICAD. That's the Japanese grouping that deals with Africa, Tokyo International Conference on African Development.
Wow.
The TICAD meeting is going to be held in Dakar next month, and they tried to say, well, only some members could be invited, and happily, not one single country supported them, so they got knocked back. And South Africa said, hey, you're trying to get Western Sahara excluded. If Western Sahara is not invited to anything African, we're not going to it. And so there they go. So they got knocked back. That was good to see.
You know what? I'm glad to see that that South Africa's International Relations Department is actually standing up for something, even if it is the Western Sahara, which I don't know that they're a major economic partner of ours or anything else, but at least we're standing up for something, right? We haven't done this for a while.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think we do occasionally, but certainly on Western Sahara, we're militant, and that's fabulous.
All right. Well, I'm very, very pleased that we had you on this morning. I would never have known about the hyena testicles. Just say the president of Madagascar's name again so we can all try and remember that.
The former president, Heri Rajawan Arimampianini. That one.
That's easy.
We learn something new every day, and especially when JJ Cornish is on. JJ, thank you so much for your time. It's always good to have you on the show, and we appreciate your insights into this amazing and fascinating continent that we live on.
Lovely being with you.
Thanks, you. JJ Cornish, everybody. JJ brought to you by the Johannesburg Business School, and you can join us in about 2 weeks' time for another episode of Africanalysis. Good stuff. All right, Lebang, are you managing children as well as the show this morning? Because I am. Were you dressing them, feeding them, getting them ready for school?
It's not that dramatic. Like I said, my 8-year-old is already ready. He just keeps coming to say who's taking me, what time are we going, blah blah blah. My newborn is still like screaming her ears out. It's just like it's my morning off.
This 8-year-old of yours sounds like you, a bit of an overachiever, huh? Wants to get to school before school's even open.
He really is. He's like a carbon copy. But you'll figure that out when you come and babysit in the near future. All 5 of them.
That's a terrible idea, because you will come home and the kids will have taken over the house, and I'll be sitting in the corner rocking gently as I cry myself. As I cry myself into a stupor. That's where I'll be. Oh wow,
dude,
that sounds like a lot of work.
There's something you posted yesterday on your Instagram. It was like your dog was sitting on this chair. So I'm gonna need that chair. That chair is just amazing. Like a throne. It just looks, it's a throne. Dare I say chair? How dare I? It's a throne for crying out loud.
And by the way, the dog just jumped on there and sat there as regal as could be. So I just took the picture and thought it was hilarious. But my brother replied when I sent the family that picture. So my brother goes, "What an ugly chair." So not everybody's a fan.
Okay, so I know who I'm not having drinks with. Your brother.
No. Different taste completely. So John Sane will be joining us in a little while. John Sane has written a new book, which I have over here. Here it is. It is called Who Do We Become? And it is his new book. John Sane, obviously in huge demand as a public speaker, as a corporate speaker, and someone who has some interesting takes on where we are in the world at the moment. Of course, we've interviewed him before. His previous book called What's Your Moonshot? He wants us to step boldly into our strange new world. And I think that any advice on that front is welcome. So we're going to speak to him in a short while. A kind of funny bunch of comments that are coming through here. Is Jomo Kenyatta's wife Queen Sono?
Sanele is really just on a roll this morning. I think Sanele reserves Tuesday for the
President
crazy
Punani says, and Chris says, President Hibiri. People are having fun. And when I asked JJ, what is the African Union good for? Congo Chris got it right. Absolutely nothing. Because really, what do they do? It's just a place for people to meet and meet. And meet about meetings. And then have a meeting
and
to
keep
schedule
meeting about the previous meeting. And then share the notes on the previous meeting so that they can plan the next meeting. So it's inception of meetings, basically. Fuck off.
Absolutely, yeah. So what did you guys do this week? We had a meeting. And then what did you decide at the meeting? Well, we're going to have another meeting. That's great. And who's paying for this? The guys that are asking about the meeting. The ones who are paying SARS. And SARS is asking for more money. It's just great. It's a big... what was the word we learned the other day? Ouroboros, which is a snake eating its own tail. An Ouroboros. That's what we're involved in here. That is the description of our situation. All right. We will be back in a moment or two with a whole lot more. We've got John Sane joining us, his new book, and we've got lots of news to talk about. I've got a whole list of things on my agenda I still want to talk to you about, and we can get Lebang's insights on all kinds of things too in the next hour. So stick around. cliffcentral.com. Don't you go anywhere. And if you do, then at least take some of us with you while you make some tea, because that's the only excuse. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
So we have a product on Auto Trader called Vehicle Check.
Well, that's not it's not a physical inspection, right? It's a history check.
It's a history check. So this is, and I think it's important to note that is something completely different. However, how does that work? So that looks at the vehicle's VIN data,
and then whatever data is captured about the car,
yes,
we try and gather. Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic, available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Tuesday morning. It is. It's still winter. You can feel it. Geez, last night I suddenly thought, I'm not enjoying this. I was feeling particularly cold, but got into bed, grabbed the blankets, went underneath them, covered even up to my ears, and then luckily fell asleep. But man, it's easier to fall asleep in winter than it is in summer because you love being in the warm, right? That's the only other advantage I can think of. So listen, a few things. Lebang, you can maybe help me with this. You can probably advise. I watch some Instagram, and I told you I got on TikTok the other day because I thought, well, let me see what this is all about. So I'm still deciding who to follow, and the TikTok suggests all these people you already follow on other social media, so I'm starting to add them slowly. Now, I've noticed this. There's a song that keeps popping up. It's called Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. It's an old song from the 80s. And people are using it as the background music for all kinds of things. Everything from someone cleaning a toilet to someone who's busy standing on the edge of a mountain looking like they're going to say something philosophical to somebody showing off their big booty. All of these people are using this song. And it's like the lyrics go something like, if only I could make a deal with God. You know that whole thing. Places. Running up that hill, and it's not even a great song. Like Kate Bush was a horrible singer. She also did that other song, Wuthering Heights, which is easily one of the most terrible songs ever written. You go, Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff. It's a horrible song.
I mean, it was a good book. I enjoyed Wuthering Heights, reading song, not so much.
This is why I appreciate you so much. You actually know that there's a book that I wish this was true for everybody. Anyway, so Lebang, why is this song suddenly making a reappearance? Why is it that certain songs that weren't even such a big deal back in the day, they find their way into Gen Z and the millennials, and then these people are like, oh, we've discovered this great song, and they put it in every Instagram video and TikTok and Reel and everything that they can. How does this happen? Maybe you can explain to me, where does the trend start?
So,
does someone cool post it first and then everyone else just follows because they're all morons? Like, what's the story here?
Well, the nice thing about the show is that if I don't know something and you don't know something, there's most likely somebody in the comment section that's going to definitely know. And our answers are right there. So according to everyone in the comments, Stranger Things, which is that show on Netflix, obviously based in the 80s in inverted commas or whatever the case is, had the song actually in one of the episodes or something like that. And, because it's such a big show, I'm sure everyone was like Shazamming it, like, oh, what is a song? And that's how it caught on. Thank you.
And now they're all using it like this. I love this. Everybody on social media thinks they're so original. They're like, oh, you're going to use that song from Stranger Things, but everyone else is using it too. So now some idiot like me comes along and we're like, why is this song trending again? And that's the reason.
Yeah.
So Snae's got it. Parallel Parking says Stranger Things have used it as part of their script. So the kids are into it. And they did this with Journey. Don't Stop Believing. Remember, they did that too. That shit needs to stop now. Yeah, I'm over Journey's Don't Stop Believing. I was over it when it was actually a hit back in the day. That's how old I am.
Nostalgia, Gareth. Nostalgia.
Cook says because it features strongly on Stranger Things. strangely. No one uses Metallica. It's devoid of royalties because obviously Kate Bush. Is Kate Bush still alive? Does anybody know? I have no idea. Someone look that up. Sean is very insistent. What can you tell us about African rainbow energy and power? I can't. I don't know anything about it except that Patrice Motsepe runs African Rainbow Minerals and African Rainbow. There's a holding company, and now he's also going into power and electricity. Obviously, there's a huge gap here, but the difficulty is that he is Cyril's brother-in-law. So you figure it out. I'm not going to say there's some big conspiracy on because I don't know. I honestly don't know for a fact. I cannot tell you like, oh, there's definitely some kind of corrupt relationship there. We don't know that for a fact at all. And at this point, I would be willing to pay a private company to supply us with electricity if they're good. That's all.
But
And if they're a little
they'll
bit,
find a way
little bit
to tax us.
little bit cheaper than ESCOM, I'll be willing to pay them. That's all I know. Ethan says, I'm waiting for someone to bring back Nicolette Lawson, Lot of Love. No, I don't think anyone's waiting for that except you, Ethan. No one else.
No.
Parallel Parking pointing out that if anyone wants to use I Believe I Can Fly, that is up for free use from now on, thanks to the owner being locked in jail. So there we go.
Oh.
Ricebec's got a nice compliment for you. Nice hairstyle, Lebang. New mommy glow going on there.
Thank you, honey. Just gotta, push your baby out, get a new hairstyle in that order,
See,
Thank you.
I was gonna ignore the comment section, but now you've drawn my attention to it, so now I need to look at all these comments.
It's happening in the
says,
comment section.
I would appreciate it if the world was as crazy about the Circle of Life. That's a more meaningful song. You mean the Elton John one? It's the circle of life. Well, people do whenever they hold up a baby, then they sing that song, don't they? I think they do. Sean says it's more related. State capture happening now, making Zuma look like an amateur. Well, Sean, bring me some evidence, and I'll say, sure, let's look at it. But don't throw around conjecture. Someone needs to investigate that for sure. But again, this is where you do need investigative journalists of the highest caliber, and hopefully someone is looking at it. I'm not sure. I certainly wouldn't put it past anyone in the ANC to be involved in anything scurrilous, and Cyril's in the ANC, so who knows? But we don't have any evidence, so it's all just pure theory on your part. Lebang is representing working mothers big time. Yes, she is. And, amazingly, she only had this baby a couple of weeks ago. It's like it didn't even take her 2 weeks and she was back on the job.
Yeah, I had the baby 2 weeks ago, literally.
Exactly.
But it's because I love my job, man. I love sitting here and chatting to you. It's what keeps me going.
Well,
It keeps people going.
I knew you were good at this thing, and I knew you were talented, and I knew we needed to get you on when I first saw you in that it was a Saturday morning, like a master class about radio that you invited me on, and then you were the host, and I was like, we need to talk to this woman. She needs to come and do some stuff with us.
Yeah, it's almost been a year, actually. We should celebrate.
We should. Kate Bush is 63, and her Running Up That Hill song never made it to number 1 until this year. So good for her. Well, that's nice.
Wow,
I mean, if Kate Bush can make
cool.
some money out of stupid Stranger Things. Listen, have you watched Stranger Things? Because I didn't watch, watch the first season up to like halfway through, and then it was too complicated to follow. So I just stopped. And maybe I'm an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm willing to admit I'm stupid and I don't get it. But
No.
apparently this is it's the runaway hit of the year already.
Look, I haven't seen this new season. I also watched season 1 and 2, I think. Then after that, I was like, okay, cool, guys. So I don't know, but the hype is there. So if it's good, then awesome.
Lebang, I'm only going to mention this because it would be remiss of me not to. I told you I ordered an air fryer the other day, right? And when we mentioned air fryer on the show, we decided on Friday, we have to remind people to like and subscribe. It's a way for us to train ourselves to say like and subscribe. So I said the word just now. So everybody, please like and subscribe because I said the word air fryer.
Are you serious?
There it is. Yeah. So this is what we do to punish ourselves. And people want to know. I mean, they're asking, like, tell us about the air fryer. I'm not going to because I haven't tried it yet. But what I'd like to do is maybe you can give me the first thing I must make there, not now on the show. You can just send it to me on WhatsApp, and I'll take a picture and see if it's a complete disaster, and then you can make fun of me if it's a disaster, or you can share in my joy if it's a fantastic meal.
Okay.
All right.
No, let's end the conversation there. Full stop on air fryers.
Yeah. Trying to bring up more about the air fryer, but if we talk about it anymore, people, their heads will explode, like on The Boys. Tracy says, I was born in the year of the dragon. My youngest son, I think she means, was also born in the year of the dragon. That makes me mother of dragons. I'm totally claiming that one. Oh, nice. Okay.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very good. I bought myself, you see, here we go, an air fryer for my 60th because of you guys. It arrives this week. Okay.
I'm
That's
proud
what you
of you.
think you deserve. You see what you've
I'm
done? I
proud of
think
you, proud
Lebang
of
has
our
shares.
podcast.
I think Lebang has shares in all the air fryer companies. That's what's really going on here. That's
I
what's
don't know
happening.
how we keep getting back here every single week. I think I don't have shares. If I did, I'd speak about air fryers all over my social media. I don't even think I've mentioned it once. This is the only platform where it just happens to come up because I love you guys. I'm trying to putting you on game here. You'll thank me. That's all I'm gonna say.
Lebang, how do you decide like what to share about your kids on social media? Because this is a thing a lot of parents are dealing with. Like, you don't want to, there are creeps and weirdos out there, and obviously there are dangerous people too, and they would be dangerous to adults and to kids, and probably the ones who are dangerous to kids aren't that dangerous because they're only dangerous to kids, who are unsupervised. But the fact is, like, a lot of people don't want to put their kids on social media because you don't necessarily want them to be in that world too early in their lives. How do you decide? Because it's every parent's decision, right? How do you decide how
Yeah.
much to share and how much not to share?
So I think off the bat, it's just like you as a parent need to really be intentional about the kind of exposure that you want your child to have on social media, and also how early. So I see a lot of parents who create whole accounts for their kids, and they run these accounts and they post from these accounts, and practically it's a source of income. They make money off of it because you have like freaking Huggies and Pampers and whatever hitting you up just to do some free PR, whatever the case is, or not free. They pay you for that thing. So your child is constantly in the eyes of the world on that platform, quite nakedly exposed. There's that. And there's the other end of it where it's like, because it's like we're in the beginning of the social media thing where we don't know what the effects are really going to be in the next 20 years. I'm a bit of a wuss. I'd rather really just protect them from it. So I'd post the milestones, or post a little bit of this or a little bit of that. Like my newborn, I haven't posted like her face, for example. I'll just post like a bit of her hair or like her little feet and little nice little feet that are twinkling, but I won't show her full blown face. And that's just kind of linked to tradition and how I was raised in terms of beliefs. It's like the first 3 months of a child's life, they're not supposed to be out there, and so I'm kind of sticking to that even in social media age. But I think, after that, it'll be like, milestones if I want, first day of schools, if like things that I'm like, oh, boom, this is great, it's an achievement or whatever the case is. But to every day show like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, I kind of reserve that for maybe like my WhatsApp status or my stories or like my close friends. But it boils down to you as a parent. You have to just be very intentional about it, because otherwise you'll end up just kind of doing and end up having your whole child's life there for them online before they even know it. When they turn, when they come of age and now they have a phone, they've got their whole freaking history there on the internet for them to see and the world to see. I don't know how that's going to affect them. I don't know if they'll like that. I think that should be their choice. My kids should decide if they want to be exposed or not. I don't want to make that choice for them.
At what age do they get to decide? Because again, it's like, this is the tough question for parents around phones, right? When do you give your kid a smartphone? Because now my little nephews are 8 and 6, or 9 and 6. So they're growing up very fast, and they're very good with like the iPad. They know how to play all those games. They know how to do all kinds of, it's like intuitive as all hell for them, and they're really good with these things. But they get a certain amount of screen time in a day, and when that screen time's finished, it gets put away no matter what, and it's not connected to the internet. It's amazing though. Greg, who works with us, was telling me he can create a YouTube account where his kids, who are also quite young, I mean, the one kid was only born very recently. The other one's, I think, 3, 4.
Like 3,
I'll coach
4.
3, 4. Anyway, he can watch a bunch of YouTube videos, and then Greg can actually see what he's watched on the back end. And like, he doesn't like something, he can take that kind of video off or out, and it has certain filters that you can apply. So there are safe ways to do this as a parent. But what is the right age to give a kid a smartphone and give them their independence? It's a tough question.
It truly is. But I think it all kind of boils down to being an intentional parent. If you're an intentional parent, then you'll be intentional about all the other things that come with parenting. It's having a limit on screen time versus just letting them go crazy for 24 hours. It's not connecting the phone to the internet versus, you know what I mean? So being very like careful and saying, oh, I'll let you have a little bit of this, but I'd rather, take it a step back and control what I can is the way to do it. Whereas unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of parents just kind of, giving their kids these phones and saying, bye, run off and learn, and unfortunately the phone becomes the parent. Everything they learn is on the internet. Everything they just consume is internet, and not enough of that is the parenting side of it. So to answer your question, I think I'll give my kids like smartphones maybe like when they're in high school, and it's one of those things where it's like you're not taking it with you to school, it'll stay at home. You'll have a couple of hours, but these apps and these little things, that's where I worry. That's where I worry how much time they're spending on TikTok. Ugh.
Yeah, you have to think about these things. Listen, it's bloody terrible to be a parent now. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to patronize parents or anything. It must be impossible to decide this shit because you get pressure from the kids. They're like, oh, but mom, this kid has got one and this kid has got one, and I'm not on WhatsApp because of it. And there's a group, and that's where we get all our notifications about sport in the afternoon, or that's where we talk about school. Or meanwhile, they're all just talking nonsense as kids do. But the access to the internet it's frightening. Like once you open that door, it's like Pandora's box. You can't close it again.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
we'll see how it goes.
Snaya says in response to your point about like how much you share, she says, isn't it scary that we feel the need to post everything? I'm guilty of this too, but I've stopped myself asking, Snaya, who cares? This stops me from posting everything about my life.
Absolutely. 100%.
The temptation also is when something really lovely happens, or if you're feeling really miserable, is that you need to kind of get it out there because it's cathartic. And if you're going through a tough time, you want to share it with people because you're hoping for a little bit of understanding and sympathy and kindness and response. And if you're going through a really good time, there's a part of all human beings. It's like, look at me, I'm having a great life. And you almost want to show it off. Of course, the truth is most people don't care, right? Most people aren't that interested in your ups and downs, and they're really interested in their own life and how you relate to them. So when they see something good going on in your life, very often people will be happy. They'll be like, oh, that's really nice. I'm so glad that that's happening to Lebang or to Gareth or whatever. But a lot of people will just be jealous and pissed off. And if you share something that is sad and difficult, of course you will get people who go, oh, I sympathize, I understand, I'm here for you. If you need anything, let me know. And those people are probably quite genuine. Who knows? But then there are also those people who'll go, ha. So you can't, if you put something out, I suppose this is the rule for a lot of things in life. Whatever you put out, you can't complain about what comes back at you. If you put out something good and you're hoping for something good in return, but something bad comes back, that's not their fault. It's your fault because you shared it and you're opening the door to a whole lot of. If you don't share, of course, you miss out on that feedback loop, but maybe that's better for you. We talk about mental health
100%.
a lot. We talk about Dr. Hananan. Sometimes you don't have to be sharing a whole lot of stuff. And sometimes if you are sharing it, you share it with the people closest to you, like friends, family, the people you really know you can trust and who have no agenda. And really, in the world, how many people do you really genuinely know who are on your side who don't have an agenda? There are probably a few. And if you're lucky, maybe a handful, maybe 2 handfuls of people who you can say, yeah, those are the ones I trust. But otherwise,
those are your people. It doesn't work like that. I recently saw a video of one of these TikTok stars who has about over 1 million followers, like major followers. Like she's a hit on TikTok, and she hosted a meet and greet, and not one person pitched. Not one,
wow.
not 5.
Really?
Dude, she's got over 1 million followers. She sat there, almost cried. She was so embarrassed. She was like, why didn't anybody come? I thought you guys were my friends. And it is at that point where it should have hit her and everybody else that social media is not real. These aren't your friends, you know, and the more followers I accumulate, the less I even want to post. I'm like, I'm too busy actually enjoying my life. I'm too busy having the fun and really being this happy that I don't actually have time to stop and capture it and share. Like sometimes I'm like, oh man, that was such a great Instagram moment. Oh well, too bad. It was for me and my family because it was so much fun. I just didn't have a moment to just stop and share. And the more private like life becomes as we go into this day, the more you appreciate it. Like, not everybody needs to know what's going on, boo. It's fine. It's for you and the few people that actually fucks with you. Everybody else, just let them go. Like, social media is just not real. And that's why when it comes to the thing of kids, I worry because we don't have any proven, statistics and research and surveys yet as to how this will affect them in the next 10, 20 years. So until then, I just keep it moving.
Just look at how it's affected people my age and your age. You look at how it screws up so many people's idea of how a relationship should work, how the job market works, about money, about happiness, about success, about failure. There are some very unhealthy things that have happened to people our age, and we think we're capable of dealing with this because we didn't grow up with these things. I didn't grow up with the phone. The first phone I had was at Varsity, and it wasn't an internet enabled phone. It was one of those like those prehistoric cell phones. So you could SMS and you could call, but that was all you could do. I think it had like that game Snake. That was it. But now
3310.
There are a lot of people my age who are pretty screwed up thanks to social media and the internet as well. And those are people who should know better. They're adults. They didn't grow up with this stuff. Imagine you're immersed in it from like age 14. Exactly. It's hard to differentiate between what's real and what's fake. It's so difficult. I do not envy parents, but I also don't envy the kids who are growing up now with all of this stuff, because there's some of it that's amazing and that is just the most incredible resource and opportunity to learn. And then there's all that stuff that you get stuck in, like the just scrolling through social media, which is just such a waste of time. And I get it. Happens to me.
Huge waste of time. And you realize how many hours of your day you've just spent.
Yeah, and I'm conscious. Like, I'm aware. I'm like, what am I doing? This is such a waste of time. But I'm still doing it. It's insane.
Dude, stay away from TikTok. It is literally, you get sucked in. You just get sucked into this place where, I won't lie, the content is interesting because it's so diverse. And there's like a huge pool of different things you can learn. But you have to limit, like after an hour, just switch off your phone. It's too much. It's just, you'll sit there for 6 hours and you'll be like, crap, I haven't even cooked supper because I've been on TikTok watching recipes on how to cook supper.
It's on here. So what I've done is I put all my social media apps into a folder, and then I only check on them. They're in one folder, and then I only check on them maybe twice a day now, which is part of my, like, I'm applying rules to my own schedule so that I don't end up wasting time on all of that stuff. So, for example, in this folder, we've got LinkedIn, we've got Facebook, we've got Pinterest, we've got TikTok, right? And all of those I'll only check twice a day. So if there's a notification in there, it's not important, because, like, who's desperate to get hold of you that uses Facebook Messenger? You know, I mean, please do me a favor. So all of those are in that folder. And then the only one that's outside of it is Instagram, because that obviously is still a channel for communication. And if you put up stuff, and I'm sharing content from Cliff Central and all of that stuff, so that's outside of it. And WhatsApp is outside of it. But those are the only two that I would actually check more than twice a day. The rest, I think I can manage, like, in those 2 blocks. I can go, all right, maybe in the morning after I've done the show, I'll do a little bit of this. And then in the evening before I go to sleep, I'll look at it again. Although they tell me that going to sleep, you shouldn't look at the phone for like an hour before you go to sleep.
But I mean, we do it, right? Pinterest is a lovely app. I think it's amazing. It's more like a freaking mood board more than it is an app where you are engaging with people. So I think, that you get a different vibe from it. As long as you can manage it and you can control it, that's good, Gareth. I believe in you. I think you're capable. The people who are not capable, many people out there, are the ones that we should be worrying about, because in the next 10 years we'll see what it would have done to them.
Well, I mean, that story about the girl who has over 1 million followers on TikTok and then arranged a meet and greet and nobody pitched. Parallel Parking says her 1.5 million followers were not real humans. 99% of TikTok is a machine liking you to keep you in. That's how TikTok ticks. Well, that's possible. That's also why the Elon Musk Twitter deal might have fallen through, because we know that there's a feedback loop that you get addicted to with social media, where if someone likes your comment, and if someone likes your picture, and if someone pays attention to you on these apps, even if it's a machine doing it in the background, it fulfills a need to be like, look at me. I'm over here. Pay attention to me. And then it keeps you coming, right? It keeps you coming back for more. You're checking it all the time and you're like, oh, I got 500 likes on this thing. That means I'm popular and I'm important. And it keeps people sucked in. So, I mean, if that's true, and I have no reason to doubt that parallel parking is making sense here. We know with Elon, he said he reckons it could be up to 50% of TikTok, of Twitter, is fake. Now, if that's true, then again, journalism, to go back to what we were talking with JJ about earlier, journalism is in a lot of trouble because they are using Twitter as a means to decide what stories are important. You know, a lot of journalists wake up in the morning, a lot of people wake up in the morning, and they go to Twitter and they look at what's trending and they go, oh, well, those are the big news stories of the day. And they might be the most stupid things like Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. You know, that could be the biggest story because it's big on Twitter. It doesn't mean it's actually a big story. It certainly doesn't mean it affects all of us. Because I can promise you, those two and their relationship has no effect on me, you, or Lebang's life, right?
Yeah, I think the bigger thing that people forget is that Twitter is not a real representation of the world. In fact, of the country. The percentage of people that have Twitter, is it like, what, 8% of South Africans? Maybe 9% of South Africans that even have it. It's tiny. So it's this. What's the word for this, Gareth? Yeah, it's that. Where like
myopic.
The horses.
Myopic.
It's myopic, and it's
blinkers. Yeah, it's blinkers. So Inga says, my husband and I put a time limit on the social apps on our phones. We only have 5 minutes in total. It's been life-changing. That's amazing. MM says,
cool.
I need Dr. Bushkin to explain why I've never had any social media accounts and other people are addicted. I really don't give a shit about them. Well, we want you to explain that, MM. So why don't you send us an email and we'll put you on the show. I mean, even if you want to remain anonymous, we don't know who MM is anyway. And you can just tell us why. Maybe Dr. Hanan can ask you a couple of questions so we can get into your brain, figure out why you don't need social media. I think that would be fascinating. Mongezi wants to know. Mongezi says, Gareth, you're on TikTok. Well, so I went on after I had Ari and Flax on the other day because they told me you're not going to believe how much really cool stuff is there. You know, again, the stuff I like is like hydraulic presses squashing stuff or like home improvement tips. Like I'm a housefrau. What can I say to you? I'm one of these organization Mari, whatever her name is. You know those people who like organize
storage.
Those people.
Yes, I love it. I love
that
it.
kind of shit. You like that too, right?
Yeah.
So they told me to get on. Yeah. But honestly, if I've been on TikTok 5 times since I downloaded the app, it's a lot. And I scroll for a little bit and then I get bored. So I'm not addicted yet. I hope I won't get addicted. Maybe I need to just delete the damn thing before it starts taking over. It's like a virus. You need to control it before it can take over. All right. We've got the fantastically talented John Sane on. I love talking to this guy. You can follow him at I am John Sane on social media. He's a global speaker. He is a future strategist, a trend specialist. He combines human behavior and future studies to create keynotes, masterclasses, and books that help people, businesses, and brands to build the courage and clarity they need to forge the future that they want. Beautifully put. He is here with us this morning. Hey, John, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm great. How's it going? Nice to speak to you again.
Nice to see you. Lebang and I were looking forward to talking to you, and congrats on the new book, which I have here in my hand. And let's just let everybody see what that is. And go out and get this book if you are looking for a way through all the noise, because really, you know, at the moment, Lebang and I were just talking, I don't know if you heard any of this, about social media and how much of our time it takes up and how you have to be conscious. And what was your word, Lebang? You have to be intentional, is what you said.
Intentional, yes.
Right. about what you do on social media, but you should be intentional about everything in your life. And unfortunately, too many of us, including me some of the time, we get carried away in the day-to-day stuff. We get lost, we get confused, we get distracted very often. Tell us about the principles behind this book. Who do we become? And is it at all related to what Lebang and I were talking about just now?
I guess in a way it is related. This idea of our addiction and our brain patterning that we almost stuck to without even realizing we stuck to it is a big part of the book. But I wrote the book because wherever I go around the world, I find a lot of people complaining about the changing pace of the future. A lot of people are anxious and frustrated about what's going on in the world, but very few people are evolving to a point where they can meet the future at what it requires from us. And so the book is broken up into three phases, the three phases of transformation. And there's always three phases of transformation. There's always the sad or the anguish of leaving the shore of familiarity, then moving into the world of the strange, the abnormal, and the wilderness where nothing really makes sense. And then eventually we get to an adventure where we have sort of momentum again and some wind in our sails. But where we are as humanity right now is very much between the sad and the strange. And we are seeing the implosion, the death, the destruction of many different cycles around us. And so I wanted to give people a sort of insight into the trends that I'm seeing, the cycles that I'm seeing ending, so that people have some sort of solace in the fact that they are not alone, feeling that their whole world around them is changing and crumbling like it is. And so I wanted to share my journey in the process as well.
I love that. So let's start off with the trends and where you think things are going, because you must be picking up on certain things which are changing quite rapidly in the world. And it's amazing how if you woke up 5 years ago from a coma that you'd fallen asleep 20 years before, and you wouldn't recognize the world. Even between 5 years ago and now, things have changed so much since the pandemic. It's barely recognizable. And people's behavior, I mean, major things like everybody sitting in traffic on the way to work to get to the office every morning. That's obviously returning to a pattern that we had before, but there's a lot that's changed since then. So what are the major trends that you see in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, and if you can go beyond that, even further?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. I mean, things are changing exponentially around us. But I think the biggest thing that we're going to start seeing over the next few years is the symbiosis with artificial intelligence. We have just had launched over the last sort of 6 months or so some incredible artificial intelligence improvements that we didn't expect for a few years. I don't know if you've been tracking it, but we have the advent of GPT-3, which is an original text creating artificial intelligence platform. So you can put into GPT-3, I want an article written about 15-year-old boys who play football in the townships of Malawi, and I want it in a comedic fashion in 10,000 words. And in 4 seconds, you have a 10,000 word original text essay written for you, and you can copy and paste it and put into Google. That's never been written before. And then what you have is DALL-E 2, which got released about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, which is this new original art platform that artificial intelligence has, which you can tell it, I want a picture of Sudanese women that are carrying water in the desert in Bart Simpson style. And you'll have in 4 seconds, 30 different variations of original art being created. This is the beginning of us starting to see the disintegration of advertising agencies, Hollywood, Netflix, and all of these scenarios that people aren't expecting at all in any way. So I think the big thing to be watching is the artificial intelligence integration into our daily lives that is going to take away a lot of the rudimentary, narrow, intelligent processes. And this gets us to become really to ask bigger questions of how we're going to add value to a world where technology and AI are making most things around us almost free. And so the big question is,
I just got to stop you for a second there. What you're talking about is terrifying, because the examples you laid out, these are the creative pursuits. These are the ones that we relied up to now on humans to do, that we didn't think machines were capable of. Writing an essay. I mean, I'm just thinking about how when I was at school, if I had to write a boring essay about something I didn't care about, I would have loved to have been able to use this artificial intelligence.
And I think a lot of students are going to be doing that. Yeah,
I think they're already doing it. I think, I think this is also if you just listen to someone like Kamala Harris speak, it sounds like her brain is already controlled by artificial intelligence, just spitting out non sequiturs. But creative things like art and writing, those used to be the domain of human creatives. Are you telling me that the machines are going to replace us even in those areas? What is going to be left for us to do, John?
Yep.
So the book sort of breaks this down, and I know it is scary, but remember that artificial intelligence for the moment is still very narrow in its intelligence. So in other words, art can make art, DALL-E 2 can make art but can't drive a car, Tesla can drive a car, can't make a toast. There's even now an artificial intelligence dentist that I saw in China now that is able to do a better job than any dentist is, because it has a 3D version of your face that it's drilling into. And I've realized for my whole life, my dentist has been drilling blind. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But what we are having...
I just want to say that I got an email from an anonymous person. You didn't publish this book by just typing it into artificial intelligence and coming up with all this stuff.
Everybody says that to me. Whenever I do a talk, they're like, John, did you write this book using GPT-3? And to be honest, I should have, because it would have been cheaper, quicker, faster, and even more intelligent, maybe, So maybe I should have.
Right.
Look, here's the thing is, and I don't want this to sound too fluffy, but I want to just give you some context. Agricultural times required human beings to be very focused on our physicality. We needed our muscles, our brawn, and our bodies to be able to toil the soil for 16 hours a day to feed ourselves and our families. Right. When the Industrial Revolution arrived, factories replaced our bodies. We couldn't compete body against factory. And so we had to develop something new called knowledge, left brain thinking, and IQ. So for 200 years, we've been given corporational sort of increased jobs and drive up the corporate ladder, become part of Mensa because your IQ was higher. So we went to university, we went to school to improve IQ and left brain thinking. But here we are where AI is now replacing left brain thinking, analytical thinking. And only thing we have left is intuition. And if you think about intuition, it's kind of something that most people think about hippies and meditators that do. It can't really pay the bills in any way or fashion. But if we think about the skill sets that are being replaced, just like you said right now, it's bloody scary what's happening. And I agree with you. We have to realize as human beings, the only thing we have left is general intelligence. And general intelligence is not accessed through left brain process driven thinking. It's accessed through emotional intelligence, right brain creativity. And so once we move into this future, and I've written this in the last part of the book, the equation to access intuition and what it means in a world where everything will become commoditized and everything will become a surplus. So we're even seeing that right now, right? Photos, entertainment, music, communication. It's just a surplus of it.
No. I mean, I've got to push back a little bit there. So there's a surplus in terms of human output of content. Some of it is absolutely nonsense, but a lot of it is there's an overflow now, a surplus of content certainly. But we have massive shortages of fuel, of energy, of capital. I mean, the capital markets have dried up. We're looking at a recession in the next couple of years. That is completely the opposite of the surplus that we're seeing in the content world. So do these things go together, or are they diametrically opposed?
No, they go fantastically together, and I'll explain to you why. Is that the end of the cycle that we're in right now requires us to sort of end the use of oil as an energy source, to end the use of the financial markets that we understand them right now. And so all of these things are collapsing around us and very much part and parcel of the process of us evolving into the next phase. I don't know if you know of a book called The Fourth Turning. Have you heard of the book called The Fourth Turning?
No. Mm-mm.
So The Fourth Turning was written in 1996 by two guys called William Strauss and Neil Howe. You don't know who they are, but you've used their language 1,000 times in your life. They're the guys who introduced us to the generational archetypes of the baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, and Gen Z.
Oh, right.
Okay. And so what they did is in 1996, they brought a book out called The Fourth Turning. And in it, they describe these 80-year cycles that humanity goes through. And they said that in the last 80-year cycle, the way that 80-year cycle ended was fascism, political divide, war, financial crisis, and job losses. And that was World War II, 1946, where the world collapsed and we began a new world of sorts with the United Nations, the dollar becoming the global exchange, and all those sort of things. And in 1996, they said, if we have got our research right, because they researched it back to the 1600s, and they realized that humanity's been going through these 80-year cycles for hundreds of years, that in 2008 to 2028, we will enter the fourth turning. That's why the book's called The Fourth Turning. And in the fourth turning, we should have the exact same characteristics of the world as we did in the last fourth turning. And like bang on the money, 2008, we had a financial crisis, we had a war, we have a war, we have political divide, we have many things that are imploding around us. So we have a surplus of sameness in the world. In other words, we have so many accountants, so many lawyers, all these people have been educated in the same way. And so everything's almost become commoditized because of technology and the surplus of that. So if you think about when petrol cars became quite a big thing at the turn of the 19th century, what really pushed that technology and innovation forward was the amount of horse shit that was all over New York and London. We know this because people were drowning in that shit. And so here we are again, where we are suffocating with petrol. The price is just out of sorts. So we're going to be forced to innovate through this. And I think politically as well, we're being forced to think about politics in a different way, because there's absolute stalemate, even in our own country, in America, in England. It just doesn't work anymore.
All right. Well, I mean, that's sort of half answering the question. And I do appreciate the examples from the past and these guys who decided on the generational archetypes, but it doesn't necessarily make a perfect fit in terms of the jigsaw puzzle. I mean, there's a lot of insanity. You said there's a surplus of sanity. There's a lot of insanity going on. We've got people talking about, like, transgender bathrooms and woke economics, and guys like Thomas Piketty, who's exactly the opposite of sane. These are not indications to me that we're in a totally left brain environment at the moment. I would say that there is a surplus of the right brain creative stuff, even if most of it is horrible, and probably an undersupply of rational reason going on in society, which is also why governments have lost their way. They're trying to sell us things that we don't want.
Look,
to go back to what Lebang and I were talking about the first hour.
Look, I think the whole rationality of our left brains created the Industrial Revolution and efficiencies and economies of scale, and that's gotten us to this point. So I do think that rationality has gotten us here. We need something else to take us to the next level. And obviously, just like anything that has a pendulum swing, we have some cuckoos coming out of the closet showing us right brain stuff. And that's not exactly where we need to be focusing in on. I think there will be a balancing out of it over the next few years, but we still need to see an implosion of the old structures for something new to actually form, like every time.
I'm very nervous. I'm nervous when people talk like you just have in that last sentence. When people say, well, there's a fence there, it's been there for 500 years, let's break it down, without asking what's the fence there for.
Well, look, I think that if we...
That's Chesterton. That was like the basic reasons why we need conservative and liberal. I know this is political theory, and I know you've got like insights into the future going on here, but I'm always nervous when people say, let's break this down because it's no longer working, without necessarily knowing what the alternative is. I mean, you talked, for example, about how we need to get off of oil and petrol and coal and all of that stuff, but we haven't exactly figured out what's next, because we can't make enough of that stuff with wind or solar or hydroelectric. So what are you suggesting? We break it down before we've got the alternative? Then we're going to end up with shortages.
No, not at all. I'm not saying we should break anything down. I said this will be a natural progression in itself to happen. Okay. And just like we never expected communication to become free or music to become free, we will see the advent of technology create solutions that we can't even think of. And again, if you think about artificial, so we mustn't come from the point of, from this perspective, we can't see it happening, so we mustn't give it any energy. And we also are coming from a disadvantaged place because we've got our own myopic process of thinking because of our memories and our history of thinking. Our rational minds can't actually see something outside of our own perspectives. And so with technology, and if you take an eagle's point of view and look at the cycles, you'll see that these things happen whether we like them or not. We're going through these cycles whether we actually want them to be happening or not, just like our season cycles. We can't stop them, just like we can't stop the sort of technological cycles that are happening around us. Sorry, I think the doctor had something to say, and I stopped her.
Dr. Lebang.
Lebang, sorry, I didn't get your name, Dr. Lebang.
Thank you, John. I have to agree with Gareth here. I'm a little bit on this fence, this 500-year-old fence, just because you say that uncertainty is the new normal. But like, how are we actually, as you're saying, with everything we've learned, all the things that we've experienced as people, are we seriously saying, you know what, we're not sure, let's just kind of run with it? That's the kind of vibe that I'm getting. And I want you to sort of please just unpack for me how I'm supposed to accept that uncertainty is the new normal and I must wake up and just be okay with that. It just sounds like a little bit of unrealistic, dare I say.
Yeah, of course. I mean, look, I start off the book with the idea that our society is addicted to certainty. We have always done everything with an absolute outcome in mind. Think about education. You didn't really do any education because you loved it. It's because it's going to give you a good opportunity to have certainty of a good salary or a good job. Even if you think about people we get married to, it's not the person that makes you come alive almost. It's a person that was going to give you the guarantee of a good life moving forward. And so the corporations that we work with are wanting absolute certainty, even though they say all about agility and experimentation. They're not. They're all about absolute certainty. And so our brains are wired in a way to want certainty. And the reason is that we have been taught to be analytical in the way we think about the world. And so, yes, absolutely, you're right. It does sound so weird to think about this. But as somebody who thinks about the future, I'm not here to confirm any of your thoughts. I'm here to try and explain to you the new ways we need to be engaging with the world.
I think this is useful, and I think that these conversations are hugely important. And I think in particular, they can help us to overcome the fear and irrationality of people involved, for example, in the green movement. Let's just look at environmentalism. Let's look at the whole climate change thing as a huge crisis which humanity will face. And we're treating the earth badly. There's no doubt about that. We are pumping filth and pollution. You just have to drive down any highway in South Africa and see all the crap on the side of the roads to know that we're not looking after the planet. But when it comes to something like global warming or climate change, I do believe very fervently, John, in what you said just a moment ago, that technology will ultimately, because technology moves on this this programmatic curve, which is exponential, we'll get to a point where we have to, and it's usually, this is always the case, right? Like if you have to hand in a project at school, you wait until the night before. And if we are facing extinction as a species, it is at that point, because we have no option. The urgency is so great that we'll develop some kind of technology to take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, for example, and convert it into oxygen or whatever else we need to convert it into. I think we're already moving in that direction. One of my favorite futurists is Ray Kurzweil, who wrote years ago about the singularity. Do you think machines, to go back to your original point, do you think machines are going to develop sentience? And do you think that we will be able to take those machines and enable ourselves to interact with them on a biological and technical interface in a way that will get us to live much longer, much more fruitfully, will give us more spare time, will give us unlimited resources? Is that the beautiful, optimistic future that you see? Or is this dystopian, like the machines will take over and kill us all, Terminator type scenario more likely?
Gareth, without getting too out there, if we think about quantum science, and if you've done any sort of thinking around that or looked up any sort of idea around quantum science, you'll start to realize we have an infinite number of timelines to want to choose from. And I personally think there is a dystopian future that certain people will experience, and there will be a blissful, optimistic future that many people will experience. And we're already seeing that in the world somehow, because some people are having a horrific time of the world that we're living in at the moment, and some people are having an incredible time of the world we're living in. So I do think that technology has both opportunities for us. I do think that there will be digital dictatorships like in China and in Russia. But you also have democracy blockchains that will help us live a more transparent world moving forward. So I don't think there's one future that we can aim at. I think there's multiple futures that we can tap into. There's obviously broad themes that happen around the world where certain countries or certain regions just experience different ways of engaging with technology, like China and, let's say, Iceland, very different engagements with technology in very different ways. So I don't think there's one sort of way for us to think about. And I actually call myself a futures strategist. And what I mean as a plural future is that there's multiple futures for us to think about, choose, and become aware of, to want to engage with. And if we think about our country right now, We have a very angry country, and that's because many people have chosen to see the lens or see it through a lens of anger and unjust. But there's also lots of people that are experiencing an incredible experience of South Africa, you know? And so we have to also become very responsible of how we choose to engage with information and what we focus on. So I love what Ray Kurzweil does, and I agree with many of his points. And I do think that we're going to be moving into a world where humans will be helped by technology. I don't know about sentient AI, because sentient means you have a soul in certain ways.
You're self-aware. I mean, if you see some animals will walk past a mirror and they'll recognize an animal, but they don't know it's them, and they start barking at it. Human beings go up to a mirror and we know that we're looking into our own eyes. And I think that is a step that's maybe too far for some mechanical
I agree.
device. But we'll have to see.
I think it was
Andreessen
Horowitz. He was on a Joe Rogan show recently, and he was talking about the fact that this AI that the Google engineer was saying is sentient has just become incredibly smart into figuring out what we want to hear as human beings. And so he was just saying that machine that has learned how to understand our behavior has just become acutely smart to answer the right questions to seem sentient. So I don't think there's that self-awareness there as yet, but there's an intelligence to pick up of what we want to hear.
I mean, it's like Siri or Alexa. You know, you talk to them and they're supposed to act like humans, but you can hear in their responses these are still not programmed responses to anything. Lebang, I know you've got a ton of questions, and I don't want to take up all the time and be greedy. So what do you want to know? I mean, John, your book is called Who Do We Become? And you kind of hinted at this just a second ago. How do you decide not to have the dystopian future and to have the optimistic tech will solve everything future that you were talking about?
It all comes down to our neuroscience, Gareth. We are mostly in a high beta brain state. And our high beta brain state says that we're in danger. And we are narrowly focused on the material world, looking for any danger that's coming to us, otherwise known as anxiousness. And so most of the world is in this high beta brain state. And so what we do is we continue to look for the same dangers that we have perceived to be out there. When we are able to move ourselves into an alpha brain state, all of a sudden what starts to happen is the critical voice inside our head drops. We get a broader perspective. We become more imaginative. We see the world in more pictures. We become collaborative. And so as we start to evolve ourselves and our consciousness to meet this future in a different way, it actually comes down to how we perceive the future through our lens of neuroscience and memories. And so the 2 points that I try and make in the book is we have to heal the trauma that we have, and we have to change our brain states to see the actual world in front of us in a different way. This will help us evolve into a point where intuition, creativity, exploration, and collaboration become an obvious, where we move away from danger to creation, from survival to imagination. And so we have to really think about how we've been trained in our brains and how it's actually stopping us from taking the next step.
Sounds rather a lot like the attitude governs altitude thing that we were taught in the 90s.
The what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Nothing is
attitude resulting in altitude, you know, kind of if you get your
attitude and altitude. Right.
So Lebang, sorry, I interrupted.
John. No, it's cool. Just quickly before we go, John, did you say that right now are we in the abnormal phase, or are we like moving slowly into adventure? And also, quickly before you go, can you just share a little bit of those things from the toolkit, from the adventure section of your book, just so we can go home and maybe start this new world thinking and, you know, recognizing this rebirth and renewal, so we can, you know, just, I guess, be in the future, because it seems like that's where you already are.
Look, I think some of the world are still in sad and anguish because they're still reeling from where they are. And you can see this from the amount of anger that's in the world, because it's easier to be angry than sorrowful. So people haven't gone through the process of actually processing the sadness and sorrow. And then the second part is this wilderness and strangeness, that people are being bewildered by what's happening around them and complaining about all this change. And then you have some people that are in adventure. Most of the world are stuck between sad and strange. But yes, the adventure ahead is being realized by some people, very small pockets of people around the world. And the equation that I have for the adventure to build the new skill of the future has got 5 steps, and I'll go through them very quickly. And for all the adults listening to the show, which is most of the people listening to the show, it might be difficult for you to take on this process, but think about your kids. If you can get your kids to realize these 5 steps, you get them ready for the skill sets for the future, because as adults, we still have to unlearn a whole bunch of shit before we actually learn anything new. Our kids are blank slates, and we all know that our kids going to school are learning things that are going to be irrelevant in the future. So let's think about the 5 steps that I've brought about into my own world, and I've seen myself evolve through these 5 steps. The first one is wisdom. And wisdom is best described by Alan Watts. He says, the knowledgeable man has to learn something new every day. The wise man has to unlearn something new every day. And it's in this wisdom that we get this opportunity to have true intuitive decision-making processes. It's having memories with no triggers. It's really healing ourselves from any past hooks into us. The second point is making decisions based on curiosity, fascination, and excitement. Remember that school never rewarded any curiosity, celebration, or excitement. It was always about logical, outcome-based thinking. Those would get the presents and the prizes, not the people that were curious. Third point is imagination, something that we have totally switched off from our brains. In fact, UNESCO's Future Literacy Program in Paris calls this mega trend that we're going through a poverty in reimagination. They say that humanity is so keen to hold on to the old world, we're not even imagining the possible and plausible futures that we can move towards. 4 is experimentation. We often want our organizations to experiment or our kids to be experimentational. But the truth is, the Industrial Revolution asked us to fit in, not fit out. So we don't really want experimentation. It's a cool buzzword for us to throw around. And 5, meditation. And the reason I have meditation is the only way for us to unlearn. If we aren't able to change the brain states, if we aren't able to stop wiring and firing our neuro molecules in the same way, we can never unlearn. And so the process of meditation gets us to move from this high beta to alpha and theta. And in this process, and you can see under sort of MRI scans, what happens to the brain in those brain states. The whole neuroscience of the brain relaxes, and you have new wiring and new firing that happens that changes the way you think about wisdom, imagination, curiosity, and experimentation.
I love it.
Sure.
That is a very optimistic and superb way to end all of this. And we've only really scratched the surface. John's book is out now. It is called Who Do We Become? There's a picture of what it looks like. Step boldly into our strange new world. And John, I'm sure that this will be a runaway hit like your previous book was. And it's always good to catch up with you. So thank you for your time this morning. And we'll see you soon. Keep well.
I look forward to it. Ciao.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
John.
Sane.
Very, very good.
Sure.
That's some good stuff. I mean, I can't disagree with those 5 things that he mentioned as the tools to kind of getting into the world of adventure. Listen, you wake up every morning, you can decide to have the greatest day of your life, or you can decide to be miserable and complain about things. We all know which one works better. And some days you're better at the one, other days you're better at the other. But what we've got to do is start obviously applying these rules and trying to be more consistent about where we're headed, and figure out solutions to problems rather than problems to solutions.
There we go.
Very nice. I love it. All right, Lebang, thank you very much. I know you've got tons of things to do. Send me an air fryer recipe, and I'll get onto it. By the way, speaking of air fryers, please like and subscribe if you haven't already this morning. Need that to happen, otherwise nothing goes right in the algorithm, and the algorithm controls everything to do with our success on YouTube. So you have to do it for us, please. Make sure you do it today, now. Subscribe. In fact, subscribe a whole bunch of your friends, even if they're not interested. They can unsubscribe later, but we need the numbers. And we will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. bright and